Good morning and welcome everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. So today we are talking all about Google Forms and Google Sheets. And if you remember from the last two times rather, we started in the 1970s and we went through Chrome and Google Drive. Then we traveled all the way to the 1980s to talk about Gmail and Google Calendar. And now we are officially in the 90s, Forms and Sheets. So you can guess what's next. It's going to be that early 2000s, and we will talk about slides and docs next month. So we're happy that you can join us. If you are watching this as a recording, thank you. And as a reminder for everyone, whether you're joining us live or watching the recording, you can access all of our resources on the Indiana Learning Lab. If you sign in with your Google account, you'll have a Chrome and Drive option as well as our Gmail and calendar training. That allows you to get professional growth points if that is something that you need for your position. So, without further ado, we're going to get started with our 1990s forms and sheets. I know you guys are seeing my screen, but you're hopefully also seeing me here. And let me know in the chat if you know whose bedroom this is and or what movie it's from. So, one of my favorite 1990s movies. I had to throw a little homage there and get into the bedroom from this movie. Okay, let's start with Google Forms. So we're going to first look at Google Forms, like some basic things in there. How do we add questions? What types of questions? What do I need to know about collecting responses and all of that stuff? So if you can either go to your Google Drive, or if you go to forms.google.com, you are able to create a new form from this home page here. Once we get onto a brand new form, I'm just gonna give you like a quick tour of things, and then we'll kind of talk about each item in particular. So our first one is going to be our title. So you'll see both, I have the title here where it says untitled form, as well as up here in the top left-hand corner. If I change it here, I'm going to call this forms and sheets. And then I click up here, it will also change it there, forms and sheets. So adding a name to our title is going to be right there. Right underneath that, and I'll actually zoom in so we can see it a little better. Right underneath that, we have our form description. So this is going to show exactly like it shows here. So right underneath that title, you're going to have a little form description. So this might be directions for my recipients or whoever's going to respond, directions for parents, students, whoever. Okay, so I can add all of that information in there. Additionally, I can add a link in there, maybe a numbered list, a bulleted list, something along those lines, if there's like some more information that they're going to need. So we have our title and our description. And right underneath that, you're going to see email. And it tells me that this form is collecting email addresses. So we're going to go over to our settings now, and let's talk about collecting email addresses. So we will be in our responses tab right here. And I have three options when I decide if I'm going to collect email addresses. The first option is I don't want to collect them at all. This one is a little dicey because if you want to know who actually filled out the form, or you plan to follow up with them, you're going to need some way of getting a hold of these folks. So I almost never do not collect, except for maybe it's a anonymous response. So they're just giving me opinions or something like that. I don't collect that email address. Next, we have verified. Verified works if your respondents have Google accounts. So if you are sending this to students or staff at TSC, this will work just fine. They will log in with their TSC Google account and they'll be able to fill out the form. Next one is responder input. This is going to work if you have parents. So not every parent has a Google account, so we can't do verified for them, but we can choose responder input. And what that will do is actually put a question in our form that asks them for that email. And it's okay if it's not a Gmail account. So those three options there: do not collect, verified, and responder input. If I choose verified, I also have the option to limit them to one response. And then that is going to allow me to make sure that they're only responding to the form once. If they just filled out the form and then maybe a few days later they go and click on that form to fill it out again, it will actually give them a little message that says you've already filled out this form. So that is kind of nice if you know that you're going to have staff filling out a form and you only want them filling it out once. Or same thing with students, right? They fill it out once and that's it. It's nice to have that limit to one response. I almost never have them allow response editing, but this would be once they've submitted it, it'll take them to a page that says that they can edit their response too. I typically don't do that. What I'll do is shut this off and allow them to respond 2 times to a form if I need to. Okay, my next one, what am I looking for? Oh, yes. Next option right underneath that is presentation. So how is this form presented to users? So the first one that I want to show you here is this confirmation message. Right now it says your response has been recorded, but you can edit this and make it a little more customized to what you actually want it to say. There is no way in here to add like a link to something else. You just have to type in plain text in there. Next one is show link to submit another response. So if you don't have that limit to one response turned on, you can show a link to submit another response here. This is helpful if you have parents filling out a form and they have multiple students that they'll need to fill that form out for. Then you definitely want to make sure that this is on. I think by default this is on, so that's good to know. All right, that's pretty much it that I'm going to talk about in the settings. So we're going to go back to our questions so that we can look through what question types do we have, what information do we want to collect. So I think on my form, I already have that I'm collecting their email addresses, so I don't have to worry about that. But maybe I also want to collect their name. Now this one is funny because I've done a lot of forms and I get a lot of different answers. So if I want their name, I need to be a little more specific with that. So I'm going to come down here to the bottom right where it says more options. Go to my description and add in that it should be their first name, last name. Or maybe I want it last name, comma, first name. Something like that, right? If it's something for staff, I might put like name as you'd like it to appear on your certificate or your PGP or whatever. But I have found that if you just put name, you'll get first names, you'll get just last names, you'll get full names. You'll be all over the place. So we like to be specific on how we'd like their name to appear in here. You can also just save yourself a little grief and just say like first name. Oh, that. First name. And then the next question I can do is last name. And that'll keep the 2 columns separate. So I have both of them. All right, next question here is how do I add more stuff? I want more things in this form. So over here on the right-hand side, I have a few different options. I'm going to quickly run through these options just to tell you what they are, but then we'll actually add a question so that we can look at what the question types are. All right, the first one is to add a question, so pretty easy there. The next one says import questions. If I do import questions, that will allow me to pull questions from a previously used form. So if I already have something created and I know I want these questions in there, then I'm able to import those. The next one I have here is to add a title and description. So if I do this, it's almost like a header. I'll just call it header. It's a little header on my form. So it's not actually going to collect any information, but it's maybe going to break up my form a little bit. After that, I have add image. So if there's something specific I want to use in here, I know we've done the license plate competition with the SROs in the past, and this is an easy way for them to add in the pictures of the license plates that the students have designed. Next, we have add a video. It does allow you to add YouTube videos if that is something that you'd like to do. And then finally, add a section. So this add a section is a little different than adding the header. If we do add a section here, it's going to make it a whole new page on our form. So they'll fill out the first page and then they'll click next and it'll load up another page. So they won't see all the questions all at once. So those are our sections. All right, let's add a new question. And we're going to run through our question choices now. So question choices, the first two, short answer and paragraph. They're basically the same thing. It just gives them a little more space when it's a paragraph. Short answer is going to be quick. If you're not really sure which one to choose, I would just choose paragraph. It doesn't look any different for you when you get the responses. It'll just give them a little more space to type. Next one, we have multiple choice, checkboxes, and drop downs. They're all in this same category here because they're the same type of question. So multiple choice is exactly that. I give some choices. They're allowed to select one, but they see all the choices. So if we choose multiple choice, I'm just going to add question, and I'm going to say A, B, C, and D. If I want them to be able to write in another option, I can also add here other, and that will give them a blank to actually type in their own response. So that's nice. This is going to display pretty much exactly like this. They'll have all of these options, and then they'll just be able to click on the circle next to what option they want. If I do the same type of question, but I have checkboxes, they can select more than one. So multiple choice, they can only select one. Checkboxes, they can select more than one, and we still have this other option here. And then the last one is drop down. If I do drop down, what you'll notice at the bottom here is that I no longer have other in there. I only have my 4 options. And I'm going to open the preview of this because I want to show you what this looks like. What it does do is it kind of saves space for your form. So I do this a lot of times if I have all the schools listed and we've got a lot of buildings in our district. Instead of having a question that would show all of those options in just a huge column, it gives me a little smaller space. And so they select that option so they're not seeing all the schools. Now, the only time that wouldn't really work is if you needed them to select more than one school, you would have to do check boxes here instead of drop down. But that's when and why I use each of these question types. It's just really preference on my end. Okay, file upload allows you to request files for your users. Now, this is only going to work in our cases for like staff and students. So I want the students to submit something to me and I'm going to ask them in a question here. So I can say maybe only allow specific file types and then choose the file type that I want. I need it to be an image, we'll say. I only want them to upload one image, not more than one. And then I can choose the file size here or the maximum file size. So once I set this, then I would be able to send out that form. Again, we'll look at this. we send out the form here and we just get an add file option for those users. What that does for me is it actually creates a Google folder for me of all those images. So it is a nice way to collect some images from students or staff. It's not necessarily going to work with parents because they don't all have Google accounts, and you have to have a Google account in order for that to work. So it's just something to keep in mind. Okay, next two are pretty similar here, linear scale and rating. Linear scale is like a Likert scale. So I've got like a 1 through 5, maybe strongly agree or strongly disagree, all the way to strongly agree. And I'm able to choose how many numbers I want. So which number am I starting with? And then what those labels would be, again, like strongly agree or strongly disagree, however I want to add that. Next, and this one's new, I like this one. If I'm thinking about like I want a ranking or a rating of a session that I did, I like to do the stars versus the linear scale because I don't want a 1. But at least if you get 1 star, you got a star. So we have stars, hearts, and thumbs up here. So we have 3 different reaction types, and then also how many you want. You can kind of change that as well. So allows them to give you a little ranking. Let's see what this looks like. So they're able to say here, I want to give a 6. So they're not actually clicking on individual stars. They're clicking at the max, and then it's filling in how much they selected. Okay, next up we have multiple choice grid and checkbox grid. Very similar here. Let's say I have choice 1, choice 2, and choice 3, and I want them to decide either yes or no for each option. So what that will look like here, it's going to look something like this. So it's going to allow them to select a response for each row, but only one response for each row. So either yes or no. If I want them to, let's say, choose Monday or Tuesday, or maybe they want to do both, instead I might use a checkbox grid. And that will let them select both Monday and Tuesday. I want choice 1 on Monday and Tuesday. Choice 2, I only want it on Tuesday. Choice 3, I only want it on Monday, something like that. So very similar to our regular multiple choice and checkbox options. It just depends on if you need them to select more than one or only one. When you're looking at deciding whether you're going to do a regular multiple choice or a regular checkbox question or a grid, keep in mind how your answers are going to come to you. If you plan to use a spreadsheet, I would use individual multiple choice and checkbox questions because the checkbox grid is going to keep all the answers together. It gets kind of confusing, and so it's I think a little easier if you do individual questions there. All right, last two pretty self-explanatory here. Date and time. If I choose date, it's going to give me that little date picker, so the little calendar, and they can then select the date. Same thing with time, it's going to give me a time picker. This is nice if you do actually want a date or do actually want a time, it's going to force them to pick that type and it will format them all the exact same way. I say that because I have in the past used short answer for something like this and then gotten various formats for my dates and times. So going back to my short answer question, the last thing I want to show you in here, we already looked at adding a description, but we also have response validation. So I can click those 3 dots and do response validation, and then I can choose, do I want this to be a number, text? Do I want it to be a certain length, a regular expression? So I want the regular expression to contain an email address or something like that. I can also say I only want them to type so many characters. Maybe with that paragraph question, it's like 50 characters and that's it. With text, I can also have email address here or URL. Maybe they're sending me a website or something. And then with number, I can choose a whole bunch of options here. Maybe it's a whole number. I can also choose that custom error text. So if they don't comply with how I'd like the response to come in, I can add some error text there to remind them of those things. I get the same options for the checkboxes. Let me go back to that one. So if I choose multiple options here, I can do response validation with that, and I can say like select at least or select at most, maybe select at most 2 of the 5 options. And then I let them know, hey, please only select 2, something along those lines. All right, let me look back at my slides, make sure that we are covering everything. Okay, I think we're ready to start collecting responses. So we already talked about those settings. So how do I want the responses to come in? Is it going to be TSC staff and students, or will it be open to parents as well? Once I'm ready, and this is a new thing, if you have used Google Forms in the past, this will be new for you. I'm going to click publish here. It used to say send, so now it says publish. And I'm going to choose who are going to be my responders. In this case, anyone in TSC is correct. If I wanted to change it, I would just click that manage to maybe open it up so that parents could get to it too. So I'm going to click publish here. And now I see that my form here is published. So that purple button changed into a white button, and I'm able to copy the responder link and then send it off so that people can respond there. One thing I forgot to talk about before collecting the responses, and this is very quick and simple, but along the top here, I have a few different options, and one of those is a little paint palette, and it allows you to customize your theme. So if you're like, oh, purple, I hate that color, you want something like light blue, or you want to choose, let's go with like a McCutcheon maroon color. I'm able to select a different color and kind of customize my form with that color in mind. I can also add an image to that form. So if I have, the McCutcheon header or something like that, I would be able to add that header in there, as well as pick just random pre-built form options. Okay. Last but not least is once those responses start coming in, and I'm going to actually find a form that has some responses. Once those responses start coming in, then I am able to go ahead and do this one. Then I'm able to review those responses here in this responses tab. So I can see very quickly how many people have responded to my form. But if it's something like, I don't want to have to check the form every single day to see if somebody has responded, I can also click on these 3 dots here and choose to get email notifications for new responses. So this is nice if you've got a form that you're going to have open for a long time. Get those email notifications so then you are notified when those responses come through. And then I also am able to review those responses. This one happened to just be, oh yeah, good. This one happened to be a lot of open response questions. But I also have like a yes or no question, again, yes or no, and then any other comments or suggestions, and it kind of grouped those together. So it's creating like a little breakdown of what the responses are. If I want to see the raw responses, I have an option to send this to a Google Sheet or create a Google Sheet from it. And then when I view it in Google Sheets, I actually get all of the responses. Now this one I've done a little editing too, so that's why it looks the way it looks, but I get all those raw responses in there as well. Okay. Now that we've talked about forms, we're going to go into Google Sheets. So I think Lori's going to drop a link in the chat, but this is also the link if you'd like to follow along in Google Sheets. For those of you watching the recording, you can pause it right now and then just go to this bit.ly here, and it will make a copy of a spreadsheet for you. Once you get to that bit.ly, you can choose make a copy here. And then we will see our spreadsheet. So you should have copy of Sheets sample data. I work quite a bit in Google Sheets, and I know some folks love Excel, and that's totally fine. Today we're gonna stick with Sheets. I'm gonna show you things to do in Sheets, but just know that some of the things that you're used to in Excel might be different in Google Sheets. They might be in a different location and things like that, but especially when we're talking about collecting responses in a Google form. Those responses are then going to go into Sheets. So knowing how to manipulate Sheets or how to access things is going to be helpful for you if you're somebody that is sending out forms for your principal or for a teacher, something like that. So we're going to just look at a random sheet of random data that I used Google Gemini to create. So our first tip here is pre-formatted tables. So this is kind of newer in Google Sheets, but it takes your raw data like this and it makes it into what I'll call a pretty table. So if you go on to your first sheet here and you click in any of that data there on the bottom right, you're going to see convert to table. So I can convert this to a table and I'm going to do that. And you'll see that now my data, it looks a little prettier, it looks a little easier to read. And we're gonna go through each of these columns here to just talk about what does it mean for these. So our first column here is an order number, which means we have that little, we're gonna call it a pound sign because that was what it was originally called, or hash mark. So this is our number. Our item is next. It is words, so that's what this column is formatted for. Quantity is going to be a number. Again, that's what the column is formatted for. Unit price, though. This one is a number, but it really should be currency, right? It's not 12.99, it's $12.99. So if I want to change this column into currency, all that I need to do here is click on the little caret going down, and I want to edit the column type. I'm going to keep it as a number, and I'm going to choose currency. Once I do that, it changes the column to currency just like I wanted it to. And if this were a form, any other future responses are going to come through like that. Next one, I can do the same thing with order date if I want it to just be like a different format. I'm able to change that to like maybe date and time or just time, something along those lines. And then finally, you'll see that this column here is a little different. So it's not just the department, like it says, it has some coloring to it, and it also has its own little caret. What this is a drop-down menu. So what I'm able to do is create this drop-down menu and then select the different departments just depending on what I'm using this for. So maybe I'm assigning something to some teachers, to a principal, and I want their name in a little drop-down menu so it makes it easier for me to select. I'm able to do that here. Well, what if there's like a fourth department? If I click this edit button, I am able to add a fourth department. We'll call it, oh yeah, business. We'll call it HR. I'm gonna make it purple. And we're gonna add that to our drop down. What you'll notice here is that I added it to this first one, but it appeared in the other ones as well. So what it's doing is it's actually using these, it's called smart chips. And it knows that all of these little drop-down menus are all the same thing. They're all the same options. So anytime I make a change on one of them, I can make a change on the other one as well. So that's really nice, and an easy way to organize some of your data. All right, let's look now at formulas. So let's go to our next sheet and look at formulas here. I can change this to a table if I want. I don't have to. I'm not going to for this one just because it's not necessary. But there is something that I do want to see on this one that's going to be a little different. So you'll notice here, if I scroll down, I lose all of my header information. So I lose that information up there if I scroll down. And maybe I've got like a lot of students and I want to keep those headers along the top. So an easy way to do this is in the top right-hand corner, right above the number 1. If you hover over that darker gray line, you're going to get we'll call it a glove. So you're going to get a glove and it allows you to grab that line and move it down. Now what we have is when we scroll, we still see student ID, student name, grade level, and so on. So it freezes that column. The other way to do this is in the view menu, you can freeze columns and rows. I can do the same thing next to the letter A. I can move this over. So if there's a lot of data going to the right, I can keep that student name right there. So those are 2 quick tips, freezing your rows and your columns. So next one we want is I want to add a formula to this, and I want it to be their attendance rate. So I want the attendance rate for each of these students. So to start a formula, I'm going to click equals, and then it's going to give me this little placeholder here. And I can say, I want the formula to be this divided by this. Okay, I want days present divided by the number of total days in school. And when I press enter, it says, hey, this looks like something you'd want to do on every row. Do you want me to go ahead and do that? And I'm going to say, yes, I do. The problem right now, though, is that these are all decimals, and I want them to be a percentage. So I can convert this to a table and make it a percentage in there. But what I'm actually going to do is go up to my format and change it to a percentage here. So now it takes that attendance rate and turns it into a percentage for me. To look at what formulas Google Sheets has available to you, I had to actually click the 3 dots on mine because my screen is zoomed in. You may not need to click the 3 dots, but there's this functions button here, and this gives you kind of everything that you have available to you. What I will say is if there is a formula in Excel, it's probably also in Sheets. You may just have to type it out. But a lot of that same stuff is within here and just helps you manipulate that data a little better. I want to show you a bonus tip. I did not actually show this to our in-person folks, but I'd like to show it here for you. I'm going to insert a column to the right because maybe I don't want the student name to show up like this, where it's their full name. I want it to be a column of first name and a column of last name. So if I do that, or if I want to do that, I'm going to select this data here. I'll right click and I am looking for, oh, I was hoping it would be here. It won't be. That's okay. It's going to be in my data menu. I have an option here to split text to columns. Split text to columns. I can choose to automatically detect it, but in this case, I know that it's going to be a space. So now I have both student first name and student last name. So that's just an easy way to manipulate some of the data coming in without having to like manually type those names, Maria Garcia, David Lee, on each of those columns. All right, let's move on to protecting data. Okay, let's imagine you're a secretary at a school and you have the students' name or IDs, names, grade levels, and homeroom teachers. And your teachers are meeting with parents for parent-teacher conferences here in the next few weeks. And you have told them, hey, when you meet with parents, will you verify that this is the email address that they want us to use? So I don't want you to change this stuff. I only want you to change parent contact. That's it. So we want to protect the columns that are to the left of that parent contact. So I'm going to select each of these columns. I'm going to come here to data, and I'm going to choose protect sheets and ranges. When I do that here, I'm going to say don't touch. I've got my range right here. I can also protect the entire sheet so that nobody can edit it. And then I'm going to choose set permissions. And then even if I give people edit access to this sheet, that particular range will be protected and only I can edit it. So there won't be any issues with people changing things that they're not supposed to change. I can also choose custom, which means maybe I give it to like 2 or 3 people, but everybody else has edit access and they can't change that particular range. You can also say, okay, maybe I don't want to like completely lock that section, but I do want to show a warning when editing it. So I'm just going to show a warning that they really shouldn't be editing this. It's a protected range. Maybe they know what they're doing, but at least it's giving them a heads up that, hey, the intention is that you would leave this alone. So we can restrict that range there, and then when editors go to this spreadsheet, they won't actually be able to change any of those things. We can also protect the entire sheet right down here. So if you right click, we can choose to protect the sheet. A few other things in this menu while we're here. We have the option to duplicate, copy it, rename it, change the color of it, which is kind of nice. It just puts like a little colored bar at the bottom of that sheet. So maybe if you're like keeping track of progress on something, red, you haven't started it, but maybe green is that it's completed. You would be able to add those colors onto the bottom there. And then protect sheet, hide sheet. If you hide it, it doesn't completely go away. What it does is it actually puts it into this area, and we can still always pull it back up. And then finally move right or move left. Okay, 2 more here. We have the first one is pivot table. All right, I love a good pivot table. It takes all this data that I'm looking at, like here, for instance, and it allows me to maybe total or tally up the data in a different way. So I want to see, in this case, it looks like there's different grade levels, there's different categories, there's different items, um, quantities. I want to know like how many of an item did 5th grade or 6th grade or 7th grade sell, or how much do they need, something along those lines. So it would probably take me a bit of time to figure that out just based on this information alone. But if I use a pivot table, I can easily figure that out. So I'm going to come up here to the top left and select all of my data. That's a quick way to select all of your data, by the way. This little gray box right up here, it's a select all. We're going to select all of our data and we're going to click insert. And then we are choosing pivot table. We are going to choose to send this to a new sheet. It's just going to add a new sheet at the bottom, but then it won't mess up like the data that we currently have in here. So I created a pivot table, but nothing happened. So there might be some suggestions here. It's not giving me any suggestions, but that's okay. I can build it myself. So maybe I want my rows to be grade. So here we go. We've got our grades here. I want the columns to be the item. And then I'd like the values to be the quantity for each item. So now let me get rid of that. Now I can see here brownies. We have 3 orders of brownies, 2 in 5th grade and 1 in 7th grade. Candy, 5 in 6th grade, 1 in 7th grade. And then I can continue to go down. So I can see here clearly like how many I need to order of gift wrap, for instance. And then if I scroll all the way to the end, I also get a grand total. So 5th grade grand total is 38 items, 6th grade is 30 items, 39 and 41. So we get a grand total both of the grade level as well as the item total. So it just helps you, again, visualize that data a little differently. Now I can play around with this and change the spacing and all of that stuff. It's just how it's displaying for me right now. I can also probably select it and let's see if it'll do a little chart for me. Ooh, maybe I don't want to include the grand total column. So the grand total column is R, so I'm going to say actually end at S. Let's try this. Oh, that's why, because it was Q. Ha ha ha. Okay, that's what I want. Okay, so now it's going to have I want my x-axis to be school grade, and then remove this one, and then I'm going to see all the things that were sold and how many of each we sold as a crew. So we've got all of that in here and we're able to see that data very easily. So we can see like pens were really popular in 8th grade. I would say the winner really is pencils in all the grades. So pivot tables, again, just kind of help you organize that data a little bit. And if you're going to make charts, I would start with a pivot table versus starting from this space to then make a chart. Okay, last one here, sort and filter. So let's convert this one again to a table. So we get a nice, beautiful table here. The reason I like to convert it to a table is because this allows me to easily sort the columns based on that criteria. So in this case, I want to sort based on the training name, or I can sort based on the department, something along those lines. So I'm able to quickly sort that data and then also quickly filter that data. So maybe I want to filter it to see just the engineering ones. So then I get all those engineering options. This will allow me to keep this data still organized. I don't have to create my own filters or anything like that, but it just lets me still visualize that data in a new way. So I want to take the filter off and show all of my data now. Now it has already automatically done this, but I want to show you if I want this part here, I want this to be colored like the department and the training ones are. Maybe I want to see all the data analysis ones. So I'm going to sort it a different way. I'm going to select column D, come up here to the paint can, and choose conditional formatting. When I choose conditional formatting, it's going to say, hey, we see this column. What do you want us to do when we format it? So I want to say if the text starts with, I think it was data. So the text starts with data. I want you to make it fire engine red. Oh, not the text. I want the highlight to be red so that I can pull those things out really quickly. When I click done, now you'll see anywhere it says data analysis, it has highlighted that red. If this was a form and I'm collecting responses, it's going to highlight all the new responses red that say data analysis. If I just have some plain old data here, and I don't really need to worry about like converting it to a table or doing any of that formatting stuff, but it's hard to read, we can choose to use alternating colors. And this is going to be our last tip for today. So Lori, if you want to throw in that check-in form, that would be awesome. So I've got my left hand top box there where I can select all of my data. I'll come back to my paint can and choose alternating colors. Alternating colors then allows me to just kind of format things differently so that it's easier for me to read that stuff. I can also format a column even or a row even more once I get that. But I like this because if I'm looking over here at David and I want to check um, what this order was for, it's just easier for me to use that alternating colors to kind of see all of that information. It's really helpful, I think, when you have a lot of text in your form responses. It's just helpful to see alternating colors, easier to read for me. So, all right. I think that is the last tip that I have. If you do have any questions, feel free to follow up with our team, clteam@tsc.k12.in.us. You're always welcome to watch the recordings again. These are going to be available forever for you. And if you didn't already guess whose background this is Cher's background from Clueless. So that's my 90s movie that I love. Thank you if you are watching the recording for watching and spending some time with us.